Hey, it's John at Tinderbox Arts. Today I'm going to be doing a front brake job on my R1200RT. This is a 2012 model year, but other model years will be very similar. Now, the brakes on this particular bike are original, 30,000 miles on them. They're actually okay, they're within spec, but the original pads, they work okay, but they're kind of dirty, and I think I'm going to do an upgrade. This is an EBC brake pad. The model number is an FA335HH. Other model years, newer model years will differ, but this does apply to many model years. And EBC is a great brand. The pads are not quite as dirty as the old ones. They don't give off as much dust as the old ones. So this will be an upgrade in that sense. And I'm preparing for a long cross-country trip, so I want to make sure I have fresh brake pads. Now I want to make clear, to do this work you do not need to remove the wheel. However, I'm going to be doing some other work. I'm replacing the front tire, and it really just makes it easier to film if I have that gone. So I will be doing that, but I don't want you to think that you need to do it. Now, before I get to any disassembly or working on the pads and the calipers, there are three things I want to check. One is I want to make sure that there's no brake drag. So when I spin this, I have the wheel off the ground now, obviously. I want to make sure that it spins freely and that those pads aren't rubbing on either of the rotors. The second thing I'm going to check for is rotor runout. So on both sides, we'll check the rotors to see if there's any wobble or from extreme heat, if they're distorted or bent or anything like that. Typically, when that happens, you'll feel it if it's severe. When you're braking as a vibration. Now, there's two ways you can check this. You can use a dial indicator, and if you have something like this, the service limit is 0.15 millimeter. That's the total runout that's allowed. If you don't have anything like that, you can go low tech and just use a pencil, hold it or mount it with tape somewhere like this, and just check as you turn the wheel, do you see a gap that's increasing and decreasing? Or if you're going to use a pencil, you can even mark the rotor. So you really shouldn't see anything significant at all. And the third thing I'm going to check is the rotor thickness. It's written right on it here that 4 millimeter is the minimum thickness. So ideally, you'll use a micrometer to check that thickness in several areas. In this case, we're reading 4.37, it looks like. And we'll check both sides, of course. Now, if you don't have a micrometer, you can use a simple caliper like this. However, this is not ideal because the edge here may be thicker than the middle. And when you use a caliper like this, you tend to measure all of that, and you may be getting a false reading here. So ideally, a micrometer is what you should use. All right, with those three things done, I'm going to pull the wheel here. You do not need to, but like I said, I have other things I need to do. All right, let's turn our attention now to the caliper and the brake pads. Remember to hang the caliper by something so you're not putting stress on the brake lines. Now, this is really challenging to film, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm going to turn this as best I can. And I just want to show the position of everything. So here are the brake pads themselves. Here are the ears sticking up. There's a pin that goes right through the top of them, right? So we're going to need to remove that pin. Look at there's like a spring clip right here. And that puts some pressure there. Remember the position of that. And then right here is like a retaining pin or clip, I guess I'll call it. And so what we want to do is remove that retaining pin or clip. And then we can undo that pin, slide the pin out, and then the pads will drop down. While I'm here, I also want to notice the position of these ears down here and up here. So I'll attempt to do some of this work from behind the camera here so you can see. So I'm just going to take needle nose pliers and pull this pin out. And the slide pin here appears to be a T30. All right. Remember to, again, keep your hand on here so you're not twisting the caliper more than you have to. Now this pin, we're going to take a look at, make sure it's not too worn. And also when we put it back together, we want to put some lubrication in there, which is lacking right now, I can see. All right, and there's the pin. That allows the clip to relax here. See, that pressure is off, and the pads then will literally fall right out. So these do appear to be factory pads. Now, the minimum thickness of the pad, not the whole not the backing included, just the brake material itself on the backing. So the brake material itself on the backing, the minimum that you want to see there is 1 millimeter. And conveniently, these slots that they put in right here, if those slots disappear, then you're at 1 millimeter. So I measured these in better light, and I actually have about 2 millimeters on here. So I could still continue to use them. However, like I said, they're very dusty compared to the different style that I picked, and they're not very expensive. And at this point, I would just rather replace them while I'm doing some other work. And that brings us back to the caliper here. Now, this spring clip, geez, I'm not sure I can even show you that, but it kind of slides in underneath. So you just pull it out like that, right? And this tab or ear right here just slides in like that. So I'm going to take that out and get that out of the way. And what I'm concerned about now is cleaning this up really well. Eventually, we want to push the pistons back into the cylinders. But before we do that, right, we want to clean this up because there's brake dust and road debris and whatever else in there. And we don't want to be pushing all that, back into the cylinders. So I'm going to take just some soapy water. I'm going to use Dawn dishwashing detergent. If you're in the UK, there's probably some other equivalent, or maybe they sell that there. I don't know. And just something like that to clean this up. So I'm going to put a bucket underneath it, get a brush in here, and just clean all the brake dust and road debris off so that we're working with something clean. All right, with that cleaned off, I'm going to push these pistons by hand back into the cylinders. And you really don't need anything too strong here. They do sell tools for this, but honestly, you can do it with your fingers. And that feels pretty good. I'm feeling, because I don't want to feel it hang up at all. I don't want, if there's any grooves or any dirt or debris or anything stuck in there, you'll feel it. It'll feel rough, or this feels pretty good. They're going back in nicely. If you do feel something rough or whatever, then there may be a problem. You may need to take this caliper apart, but this one feels fine. I don't feel any problems. And you need those pistons back in their cylinders because presumably the new brake pads will be a little bit thicker, so you need that extra space to get everything together. So that does feel good. I don't have any issues with that. All right, I got the pin cleaned up with a wire wheel. If you don't have a wire wheel, use a Scotch-Brite pad or something like that. And as long as there's not any, deep gouges or anything, as long as this is smooth again, then you're in good shape. Now I'm going to compare the new pads to the old pads. Even though these are brand new and I know they're the correct part number, honestly, I find so many problems with manufacturing these days that it's a good idea to really take a hard look at everything you put in. Make sure it's sized correctly, everything looks right. If you're curious about the amount of brake material on the pads, remember the old ones I measured about 2 millimeters left. The new ones have about 4.5 millimeters of pad material, brake material on the pad itself. So quite a bit different, more than double. You'll also notice the new pads do not have these indicator lines, which is fine. But everything looks good. I see that it matches up correctly. Actually, I do see something I don't care for. The manufacturing process left a little ridge at the top here, and that's where the pin will slide. I'm just going to take a file very lightly and just get rid of that ridge. I'm not sure you can even see that, but it's there and it annoys me. I want that to be smooth. Okay, that's better. It just bothered me that there was just a little ridge there that could dig into this pin. So with that out of the way, we need this pin lubricated to protect it and allow these pads to slide a little bit. There are some copper-based brake greases you can get, but this is new to me. It's what I could get at the moment. It's Ceramic Extreme. It's made by Permatex. I don't know. It doesn't really matter as long as it's designed for brake parts so that it has a high melting point or high tolerance of temperature so it doesn't come down and melt all over your pads. Okay, that's one of the things where you need 3 hands, but we got it in there. So this is just hand tight or finger tight right now. I want to make sure everything looks good. The ears are in the right place. The spring clip there is in the right place, and everything looks good. And then I can tighten this up with tools and make sure we're all in place, but it looks okay. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We're already there. Everything looks pretty good. Now we have one more thing, which is the clip. So we'll get this installed. Remember, it goes in that little slot, I'll call it, on the side there. I should be able to do this by hand. There. All right, so it's in the slot in the pin, and it should be hanging over the caliper like that. So we got the spring clip, we got the locking pin or clip, whatever it's called, and I think we're in good shape. You might choose to put a little tiny bit of grease where this spring clip touches the metal of the caliper there, but really you don't want to use too much because that's very close to where the pads are. You just don't want it dripping down onto the pads. Now I have the other side to do, obviously, and when I put this back together, you want to test in the shop that everything's working. So compress the brakes with a lever, make sure everything's good, and you take up that space that you added probably by pushing the pistons in. You don't want to be out on the road to figure that out. And of course, the last thing to do is to check the level of the brake fluid. You push the pistons back into the cylinders, and as a result, this fluid may actually be too high now. So just take a look at that before you move on.